In this video, I'll be talking about Minecraft's combat mechanics and how they changed throughout the years. I'll be discussing which version is truly the best for PvP by comparing them and giving the pros and cons of each. Let me know your favorite combat afterwards, but for now, sit back and enjoy. Starting off is the oldest combat on the list, being 1.7.10, which was the last 1.7 version that was released in June of 2014. This version was and still is considered by some in the community to be the best version for competitive PvP. Now after hearing this, you might be thinking that 1.7.10 is some sort of mystical version, but it actually isn't all that special, other than being the last version to keep Minecraft's original combat from the game's early days. If you compared 1.7 PvP to 1.8 at face value, you wouldn't even notice that they're two different versions. So what supposedly makes 1.7 better than 1.8 PvP? There actually isn't that much of a difference, but here are a few changes. Firstly, block hitting was removed in 1.8. You can still block and hit, but you can't do it at the same time. Now, I don't mean the actual mechanics of it were removed, but the animation was removed. So you can still block hit, but you can't actually tell when you're doing it. This also goes for eating food while punching, drawing your bow while punching, drinking potions while punching, and a few other movements. Most of this doesn't really matter, but knocking people back while you eat and drink food can make a difference in PvP. Another few minor changes to 1.8 is that there's a small mouse delay when attacking, and also armor doesn't turn red anymore, making it less satisfying when you fight someone. Honestly though, almost all of these problems with 1.8 can be fixed with clients such as Lunar, or mods which bring back the 1.7 animations, which is why most people don't really care for this version anymore, and also because it's way too outdated. 1.8.9 is currently the most popular version for PvP, with most large servers still using it. This is essentially the same as 1.7 combat, but with the minor changes that I mentioned. Not only is this combat the most popular for Java servers, but also for Bedrock Edition as well, as Bedrock still hasn't updated to the new combat system after 1.8. 1.8 combat is known for being very fast paced and heavily reliant on combos. It's a common misconception that 1.8 PvP is simply about who can click the fastest, but there's much more to it than that. It doesn't matter if you can click 15 times a second, because someone who clicks half as fast as you can easily beat you if you don't know how to use fishing rods, bows, and sword combos to your advantage. The problem with 1.8 is, again, this is extremely outdated as it came out over 6 years ago. But an upside to this is that it's also very easy for players with low-end hardware to run because it has less content. Servers also prefer 1.8 because it's much less intensive on memory usage. 1.9 introduced the new combat mechanics in February of 2016, and they've been used ever since. And when I'm referring to 1.9, by the way, I mean all versions up to the latest version, which is 1.18 right now, since they all share the same combat. This update completely changed PvP as we know it, so I'll only mention the most important changes because otherwise this video would get too long. And I'm sure you're all familiar with them by now anyway. The first change is the cooldown on all weapons, and the longer the cooldown, the stronger the weapon. And since axes have the longest cooldown time, taking about 1 second to recover before they can be used again, they do much more damage than swords now, making them the preferred weapon of choice for many. In addition to that, shields make swords even less useful, as a shield can block all damage from a sword. The slower pace of the new combat has created a new frontier for never before seen techniques in Minecraft PvP, and one of the most popular of these is crystal PvP. Ever since it became possible to craft end crystals, it's become one of the leading weapons for 1.9 combat, as they do insane damage compared to anything else in the game. So what are the advantages to 1.9 combat? The first is that this new combat is much easier to learn than 1.8. For example, if you went on a 1.8 PvP server as a new player, you'd have no chance against anyone else, and you'd have to spend hundreds of hours practicing techniques before you can even be considered decent. But if you go into a 1.9 server as a new player, you'll be able to pick it up much easier as it's much more forgiving. However, 1.9 combat is also the most controversial, with many refusing to even play it because they're so used to the fast-paced 1.8 PvP. Combat snapshots have been released every few updates since 2019 to test out new combat mechanics which can hopefully find a balance between the old and the new. Some of these include different reach for weapons and a much faster attack speed overall. It's not clear when these changes are going to be made, but judging by the rate at which the snapshots are coming out, it doesn't seem to be a priority right now. However, Jeb, the lead developer of Java Edition, has said that they're aiming to make combat consistent between Bedrock and Java, so eventually these changes will come out. So which is the best Minecraft combat system? 1.7, 1.8 or 1.9? First, let's get 1.7 out of the way, since we can all agree that it's far too outdated to even be considered near the best. At this point, it's only used by hardcore PvP players on select servers and can easily be replicated with mods in 1.8. So now, between 1.8 and 1.9, which is better? Personally, I believe that 1.8 takes more skill, and that's not to say that 1.9 doesn't take skill, but it's to be expected that 1.8 has the largest skill gap considering how long these old combat mechanics existed, and how good some players have gotten at them. I would say that mastering 1.9 PvP is as hard as learning to be a decent 1.8 player, but mastering 1.8 is much harder. However, I still prefer 1.9 because it's more accessible to new players, who won't get destroyed by someone comboing them, and honestly, in my opinion, it's just more fun. One thing that should be considered is that the things you can do with 1.9 combat are just impossible to do in 1.8. Dual wielding, shields, totems, axe PvP, crossbows, crystals, potion tipped arrows, new enchantments, and these are only just a fraction of what's possible with a new combat. Also, I like how I keep calling it the new combat when it's been out for 6 years. But yeah, these give far more fighting options than 1.8 combat, which mainly relies on swords, potions, and fishing rods. At the end of the day, it's up to you to decide which combat you like more, but you should also give both versions a chance, because it's easy to get into a mindset where you hate one of them without properly exploring all aspects of it. If you want to compare both PvP versions for yourself, here are the two servers that are the best of each combat. I recommend that you play for at least an hour on each server and then decide which one you like more. Even if you're set on a single version of PvP already, trying this could give you a new perspective on the other combat, and you never know, you might find some things you like about it. With new PvP snapshots coming out, we might very well see another update to Minecraft's combat. So comment down below what changes you'd like to see, and which version of PvP is your favorite. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, let me know what other type of Minecraft content you'd like to see. And if you didn't enjoy it, feel free to give any feedback or suggestions for future videos. Bye.